3 true Starbucks horror stories, animated story. 1 regular. My name is Kendall, and I was 23 years old when this happened. I was working as a barista at a Starbucks in Portland, Oregon, one of those downtown locations that stayed busy from open to close. It was a Tuesday evening in early November, around 6:15 p.m., when I first noticed the man sitting in the corner booth. He had ordered a tall black coffee almost 3 hours earlier, and had not touched it since. Every time I looked up from the espresso machine, he was watching me. Not the other baristas, just me. His eyes followed my every movement, like I was the only person in the room. Before I continue, make sure you hit that subscribe button and leave a comment telling me where you are watching from tonight. Because what happened over the next 2 weeks is something I will never forget. The Starbucks I worked at was located on the ground floor of an office building in the downtown business district. We opened at 5:30 in the morning for the early commuters and closed at 9 p.m. after the dinner crowd cleared out. During peak hours, the line would stretch out the door. But by evening, things slowed down considerably, leaving maybe 10 or 15 customers scattered around the seating area at any given time. I had been working there for about a year and a half, starting right after I finished community college. The job was demanding, but I enjoyed it. The regulars knew my name, the tips were decent, and my co-workers had become like family. The shift supervisor, a woman named Rachel, had been training me for a management position. Everything was going well. That Tuesday started normally. Morning rush, afternoon lull, evening pickup. I was working the closing shift scheduled until 9 when we locked the doors. By 6 p.m., the crowd had thinned to a handful of people on laptops and a few customers waiting for orders. That is when I noticed him. He was sitting in the corner booth near the window, the one that had a clear view of the entire counter area. Mid-40s average build, wearing a grey sweater and glasses. He had a laptop open in front of him and a cup of black coffee to his side. He looked like any other professional working remotely, except he was not looking at his laptop. He was looking at me. I caught his eye accidentally while scanning the room, and instead of looking away like most people would, he held my gaze, just stared. No expression on his face, no acknowledgement that he'd been caught watching, just calm, steady observation. I looked away and went back to work. People stare sometimes. It happens in customer service. You learn to brush it off. But every time I glanced in his direction over the next hour, he was still watching. Not his laptop, not his phone. Me. At 7:30, I mentioned it to Rachel. I nodded toward the corner booth and said the guy had been staring at me for over an hour. She looked over, then back at me with a concerned expression. She said she would keep an eye on him. He left around 8, gathering his things, slowly taking his cold, untouched coffee and dumping it in the trash on his way out. As he passed the counter, he looked directly at me and smiled. It was not a friendly smile. It was knowing, possessive, like we shared a secret that I was not aware of. I told myself it was nothing. One weird customer on one weird night. It happens. He came back the next day. Same time, same booth, same coffee he never drank, same eyes that never left me, and the day after that, and the day after that. For 2 weeks he was there every evening from around 6 until 8, always watching me, never approaching the counter to order after that first coffee, never speaking to anyone, just sitting watching, making notes in a small notebook that he kept beside his laptop. I started dreading my shifts. The moment I would see him walk through the door, my stomach would clench. I found myself making mistakes, dropping cups, forgetting orders. Rachel noticed the change in my performance and pulled me aside. I told her what was happening. She said we should document everything: times, dates, behaviors. She said if it continued, we would contact the police. She said I should never leave the building alone. On the 14th day, he did something different. It was around 7:45. I was restocking the pastry case when I felt someone behind me. I turned around. He was standing at the counter, right in front of me. I had not seen him approach. He said in a voice that was soft and calm that he'd been watching me for a while. He said he knew my schedule. He said he knew what time I started, what time I ended, which days I worked. He said he knew I took the bus home and which stop I got off at. He said he lived 2 blocks from my apartment. My blood went cold. I had never told anyone at work where I lived. I had never mentioned my bus route or my stop. He'd been following me for weeks, learning everything about my life. He said he thought we had a connection. He said he could tell by the way I looked at him. He said we should get dinner sometime and talk about our future. I could not speak. My throat had closed up. I just stood there, frozen, staring at this man who knew where I lived, who had been mapping my entire existence without my knowledge. Rachel appeared beside me. She had heard part of the conversation. She told him firmly that he needed to leave. She said he was making employees uncomfortable and was no longer welcome in the store. She said if he did not leave immediately, she was calling the police. He looked at Rachel for a long moment. Then he looked back at me. He smiled that same knowing smile. He said we would talk later. Then he turned and walked out. Rachel called the police. They came and took a report. I told them everything. The watching the notes, the information he had gathered about my life. They said they would look into it. They said I should be careful. I did not go home that night. I stayed with Rachel. I was too afraid to be alone in my apartment, knowing he was 2 blocks away. The next morning, I went to my building with Rachel and a police officer. We found a note taped to my door. It said he was disappointed that I had involved the police. It said he thought I was different. It said we would talk when I was ready to apologize. I moved out that day. I didn't even take most of my belongings. I just packed a bag and went to my parents' house in another city. I quit my job at Starbucks. I quit everything about my life in Portland. The police eventually identified him. He had a history: stalking charges in 2 other states, restraining orders that he had violated. He had served time and been released 3 months before he walked into my Starbucks and ordered that cup of black coffee. They arrested him for violating the conditions of his parole by engaging in stalking behavior. He got 2 years. That was it. 2 years for dismantling my entire life, for making me afraid to exist in my own city. He is out now, has been for over a year. I do not know where he is. I do not know if he is looking for me. I live in a different state now, different job, different name on my social media, which I barely use anymore. I do not have a routine. I do not go to the same places at the same times. I check over my shoulder constantly. I vary my routes. I trust no one who pays too much attention. Because I know now that the person watching you from across the room might not just be curious. They might be building a file, learning your patterns, planning something you cannot imagine. And by the time you realize what is happening, they might already know more about your life than you do. Story 2. The Bathroom. My name is Preston, and I was 29 years old when this happened. I was stopping at a Starbucks in a strip mall outside of Denver, Colorado, on my way home from a business trip. It was around 4:30 in the afternoon on a Saturday, and the place was crowded with weekend shoppers and families. I ordered my drink, waited for it at the pickup counter, then headed to the restroom before getting back on the road. The bathroom was a single occupancy room at the back of the store, down a short hallway past the storage area. When I pushed open the door and stepped inside, I found something that made me back out immediately. And when I turned to leave, someone was standing in the hallway behind me, blocking my path. If you are new here, hit subscribe and turn on notifications. Because what happened in that hallway is something every person needs to hear. I had been driving for about 5 hours at that point, making my way back from a conference in Salt Lake City. The drive through the mountains had been beautiful, but exhausting, and I needed caffeine and a bathroom break before tackling the last 2 hours to my apartment in Denver. The Starbucks was in one of those suburban strip malls with a grocery store anchor and a bunch of smaller shops. The parking lot was busy, typical Saturday afternoon traffic. I found a spot near the entrance and went inside. The store was crowded, but moving efficiently. I ordered a grande americano, paid, and moved to the pickup area. The wait was maybe 3 minutes. I grabbed my drink, took a sip, and looked around for the restroom. I spotted the sign near the back of the store, pointing down a short hallway. I walked past the tables and chairs, past the display of mugs and coffee beans, into the hallway. The hallway was maybe 15 feet long, with doors on both sides. One was marked storage, one was marked employees only, and at the end was a single door marked restroom, a unisex single occupancy bathroom. I pushed the door open and stepped inside. The first thing I noticed was the smell, metallic and sharp. It took me a second to place it, but when I did, my stomach dropped. Blood. The bathroom smelled like blood. The second thing I noticed was the state of the room. The mirror above the sink was cracked, a spiderweb of fractures radiating from a central point, like something had been slammed against it. There were dark stains on the floor near the toilet, smears on the wall. The trash can was overturned, its contents scattered across the tile. Something terrible had happened in this room. Recently. I backed out immediately, my heart pounding. I needed to find an employee. I needed to tell someone what I had seen. I turned around. A man was standing in the hallway maybe 6 feet away from me. He was blocking the path back to the main store. He was tall, maybe 6'2", with a shaved head and a thick build. He was wearing a dark jacket despite the mild weather. His hands were at his sides, fingers curled slightly, and there was something on his right hand, something dark, a stain that looked wet. He smiled at me. It was not a friendly smile. He said he was sorry I had seen that. He said it was not supposed to happen like this. He said the bathroom was supposed to be cleaned before anyone else used it. I did not understand what he was talking about. My brain was still trying to process the blood in the bathroom, the cracked mirror, this man blocking my exit. He took a step toward me. I backed up my shoulder, hitting the bathroom door behind me. There was nowhere to go. The hallway was narrow. He was between me and the main store. The only other doors were storage and employees only. He took another step. He was close now, maybe 4 feet away. I could see his eyes clearly. They were calm, patient, the eyes of someone who had done this before. He said I should come with him. He said if I cooperated, nobody else had to get hurt. He said he had a car outside. I looked past him toward the main store. I could see the edge of the seating area, customers drinking coffee, oblivious to what was happening 15 feet away. If I screamed, they would hear me. Help would come. I screamed. I screamed as loud as I could, a wordless shout that echoed off the narrow hallway walls. The man's expression changed. The calm disappeared, replaced by something vicious. He lunged at me. I threw my coffee at his face. The lid popped off, and hot liquid splashed across his eyes. He stumbled backward, cursing, clawing at his face. I ran. I shoved past him, my shoulder catching his arm. I sprinted down the hallway into the main store, still screaming, waving my arms. Customers looked up, startled. Employees froze behind the counter. I pointed toward the hallway and shouted that there was a man back there, that something had happened in the bathroom, that someone needed to call the police. 2 male customers stood up from their tables, positioning themselves between the hallway and the rest of the store. A barista grabbed her phone and dialed 911. Someone else was herding other customers toward the front entrance. The man did not come out of the hallway. When the police arrived, about 6 minutes later, and went back there, he was gone. The employees-only door led to a back area with an exit to the alley behind the strip mall. He had fled, but they found something in the bathroom. Someone. A woman. She had been attacked, beaten badly, and left unconscious behind the door. That was why I had not seen her when I first looked in. She was hidden by the door I had pushed open. She was alive, but barely. The paramedics rushed her to the hospital. She spent 2 weeks in the ICU before she was stable enough to give a statement. She told the police what happened. She had been using the bathroom when he pushed his way in. He had attacked her, planning to take her out through the back exit to his car in the alley. But she had fought back. She had hit her head against the mirror, cracking it. She had screamed, but the bathroom was far enough from the main store that no one heard. He had knocked her unconscious and was cleaning up, preparing to move her, when I walked in. My arrival interrupted his plan. My scream brought help. The police found his car in the alley. They found his DNA. They found his fingerprints on the bathroom door. He was identified within a week. A convicted offender with a history of violence. He was arrested at a motel about 50 miles south of Denver, trying to flee the state. He is in prison now. Long sentence. He will not be getting out for a very long time. The woman survived. I never met her, but she sent me a card through the police. It said thank you. It said I saved her life. I do not know if that is true. Maybe she would have survived anyway. Maybe someone else would have found her. But I know that if I had not screamed, if I had not thrown that coffee, if I had just done what he told me, things would have ended very differently for both of us. I think about that day often. The bathroom that smelled like blood. The man blocking the hallway. The split-second decision to scream instead of comply. If you ever find yourself in a situation like that, do not cooperate. Do not go with them. Do not let them take you to a second location. Because whatever they have planned for you, there is worse than anything that might happen if you fight back. Scream, throw something, make noise, draw attention. Do whatever it takes to disrupt their plan. Because they are counting on you to be quiet. They are counting on you to be scared. They are counting on you to do exactly what they say. Do not give them what they want. Story 3. The Closing Shift. My name is Desmond, and I was 26 years old when this happened. I was the shift supervisor at a Starbucks in suburban Atlanta, Georgia, responsible for closing the store on weeknights. It was a Wednesday evening in mid-December, around 8:45 p.m., and we were 15 minutes from closing. The store was empty, except for me and one other barista, a 19-year-old named Tyler, who was cleaning the espresso machines. I was in the back office counting the register drawer when I heard the front door chime. A customer walking in during the last few minutes before close was not unusual. What was unusual was the silence that followed. No footsteps approaching the counter. No voice asking if we were still serving. Just silence. And then Tyler's voice, tight with fear, calling my name. Make sure you are subscribed with notifications on, because what happened in that store is something every closing shift worker needs to hear. The Starbucks I managed was located in a shopping center on the outskirts of Atlanta, surrounded by other retail stores that all closed by 9. By 8:30, the parking lot was usually empty except for employee vehicles and the occasional car passing through. We closed at 9 on weeknights, which meant the last 30 minutes were usually spent cleaning and closing out the registers with minimal customer interruption. I had been working at that location for about 3 years, the last year as shift supervisor. I knew the closing procedures inside and out. Locked the doors at 9, finish serving any remaining customers, clean the store, count the registers, make the deposit, set the alarm, leave. That Wednesday I was working with Tyler, who had only been with us for about 4 months. Good kid, reliable, but still learning the ropes. I had been training him on closing procedures, letting him handle more responsibilities as he got comfortable. By 8:30, we had not had a customer in almost 40 minutes. The store was quiet, except for the sound of Tyler cleaning equipment and the soft music playing through the speakers. I left Tyler at the front and went to the back office to start counting the register drawer early. The office was small, maybe 8 feet by 10 feet, with a desk, a safe, and a bank of security monitors showing feeds from cameras throughout the store. I sat down at the desk and started sorting the money. At 8:45, I heard the front door chime, a customer coming in. Tyler could handle it. I kept counting. Then I heard Tyler call my name. There was something in his voice, a tremor, fear. I stood up and walked out of the office into the back area. I could not see the front counter from there, but I could see the security monitors through the office doorway. On the monitor showing the front counter, I saw Tyler standing behind the register. His hands were raised slightly, palms forward, the universal gesture of surrender. In front of the counter, I could see 2 figures. Men, both wearing dark clothes and masks that covered the lower half of their faces. One of them was holding something. Even on the grainy monitor, I could tell what it was. A gun. My heart stopped. My brain went blank for a moment, just pure static, unable to process what I was seeing. Then I moved. I grabbed my phone from my pocket and dialed 911. I stayed in the back area, out of sight from the front, and whispered into the phone. I gave them the address. I told them there were 2 armed men robbing the store. I told them my employee was being held at gunpoint. The dispatcher told me to stay hidden. She told me police were being dispatched. She told me not to do anything that would put myself or my employee in danger. On the monitor, I watched the men forcing Tyler to open the register. One of them kept the gun pointed at Tyler while the other grabbed money from the drawer. They were moving fast, efficient. They had done this before. Then one of them looked toward the back of the store, toward the hallway that led to the back area where I was hiding. He said something to his partner. They both looked. They knew someone else was there. They had seen 2 cars in the parking lot. They knew there was another employee. The one with the gun started walking toward the back. I looked around desperately for a hiding spot. The back area had the office, a storage room, a small employee bathroom, and the back door that led to the alley. The back door. I could run. I could get outside and wait for the police. But Tyler was still at the front. If I ran, I would be leaving him alone with armed men who might hurt him when they couldn't find me. I could not do that. I ducked into the storage room and pressed myself against the wall behind a stack of boxes. The storage room was dark, the light switch by the door. If he came in, he might not see me immediately. I heard footsteps, heavy footsteps approaching down the hallway, then stopping. He was close, just outside the storage room door. The door opened. Light from the hallway spilled in. I held my breath, pressing myself further into the shadows. I could see his silhouette in the doorway. He was looking into the room, scanning for movement. He took a step inside. Sirens. Distant, but getting closer. The man heard them too. He froze, listened, then turned and ran back toward the front of the store. I heard shouting, footsteps, the front door chiming. Then more sirens, closer now, right outside. I stayed in the storage room, not moving, barely breathing. I heard car doors slamming, voices yelling commands, the sounds of a confrontation happening somewhere outside. After what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes, I heard a voice calling out. Police. The building is secure. Anyone inside, make yourself known. I stepped out of the storage room with my hands raised. 2 officers were in the back hallway, weapons drawn. They saw me, confirmed I was an employee, and escorted me to the front of the store. Tyler was sitting on the floor behind the counter, shaking but unharmed. The 2 men had fled when they heard the sirens running out the front door and across the parking lot. The police had caught one of them at the edge of the property. The other had escaped on foot, but was apprehended an hour later, hiding in a dumpster behind a grocery store. Both of them were armed. Both had prior records. Both were charged with armed robbery and a list of other offences. Tyler and I gave our statements. We were taken to the hospital to be checked out more for psychological evaluation than physical injuries. Neither of us was hurt. We were lucky. But I did not feel lucky. I felt hollowed out. For weeks afterward, I would see those masked figures every time I closed my eyes. I would hear those footsteps approaching the storage room. I would feel that moment of absolute terror when the door opened, and I did not know if I was about to die. I tried to go back to work. I made it through 3 more shifts before I had a panic attack in the back office. The security monitors, the same ones that had shown me my employee at gunpoint, triggered something in me that I could not control. I quit the next day. Tyler quit too. He went back to school, decided that working retail was not worth the risk. I do not blame him. I feel the same way. I work in an office now, 9 to 5, no customers, no closing shifts. The building has security guards and badge access and locked doors. It is as safe as any workplace can be. But I still think about that night. The sirens that arrived just in time. The officer who told me later that my 911 call had them dispatched within 90 seconds. The fact that if I had waited another 30 seconds to call, if I had hesitated, if I had tried to handle it myself, Tyler might not have gone home that night. If you work in retail, especially if you work closing shifts, please have a plan. Know where the panic buttons are. Know how to call for help quickly and quietly. Know where you can hide if you need to. And know that your life is more valuable than anything in that register. If someone comes in with a weapon, do not be a hero. Give them what they want. Let them take the money. It can be replaced. You cannot. But also know when to hide. Know when to run. Know when your presence might make things worse instead of better. I do not know what would have happened if I had walked out to the front counter instead of hiding. Maybe they would have just taken the money and left. Maybe they would have done something worse with 2 hostages instead of 1. I will never know, and I am grateful for that. Those were 3 true Starbucks horror stories. Coffee shops are places we visit every day, sometimes multiple times a day. We order our lattes and Americanos, we sit with our laptops and our books, we meet friends and take meetings. We feel safe because we are in a public place surrounded by other people in the middle of ordinary lives. But as these stories show, danger does not care about ordinary. It can walk through the door at any moment. It can be sitting in the corner, watching, taking notes. It can be waiting in a bathroom hallway. It can burst in 15 minutes before closing with a gun and a mask. Pay attention to who is watching you. Trust your instincts when something feels wrong. Know where the exits are. Know how to call for help. And remember that your safety is more important than being polite. More important than avoiding awkwardness. More important than anything that might be in the register or behind the counter.